When the Enshrouded demo came out last October, I had such a great time with it that I didn't want to put the game down, so I'm really glad we only had to wait until January for Enshrouded to come out. It's been a treat to be able to get stuck into the whole game without a time or content restriction like the demo had. Now, this isn't a review, but broadly speaking I will say that I've been having a great time with the game. It's very immersive, and although it has its issues, it's pretty well fleshed out considering it just entered early access. It honestly reminds me of the comprehensive nature of Valheim's launch into early access in 2021. Today, I just wanted to talk about some of the things I have noticed so far that have stuck out to me that I would like to see change in the near future. This isn't meant to be an exhaustive list of issues with the game though, it's merely a collection of things that I have noticed that mattered enough to me to take the time to note them down during my first week of play. I would also note that my primary interest in survival games is with the building, so if you wonder why I put so much focus onto that, that's why. Starting with the inventory system and hotbar, first of all, the game's hotbar only goes from the numbers 1 to 8 on the keyboard. It would be great if this could be extended through 9 and 0, and maybe even minus and equals as well, as those keys are just being wasted right now. Secondly, it would be great to have an option to disable automatically adding picked up items to the hotbar, as I like my hotbar to be configured a certain way and I don't want to have a bunch of junk added to it all the time. Funnily enough, the only time I found myself actually wanting this functionality is when you place down a piece of furniture then pick it back up again because you want to change the placement. It puts it in your backpack instead of your hotbar, even though it just came from your hotbar. Now this is a small thing, but it would be nice if by default the game prompted you to confirm before deleting items, not just for rare items or above, but all items, because when I first started playing and hadn't figured out the UI yet, I clicked delete just to see what it did, and I permanently deleted something, even though I hadn't consciously clicked on the item first, and then I couldn't get it back and I didn't even know what it was I deleted. I know, call me stupid or something, all you like, but sometimes you just need to press things and find out what they do. Lastly, an ability to split a stack to an exact amount that you need would be lovely, because right now if you have a stack of 250 wood and you only want 10, you have to split the stack 4 to 5 times and have enough free slots for those extra stacks to occupy in order to get just what you want. In practice, this means you end up just taking the whole lot into your inventory to save time, but then if you're playing with a friend, you end up having to ask each other for resources all the time when you could have simply taken what you needed in the first place if you could have specified the exact amount. On the subject of immersion, right now you have all this lovely furniture but you can't actually sit in it. You can only sit on the floor or lie down on your bed. It's really disappointing to those of us that love immersion that the game didn't launch with this feature, and I really hope it's a high priority for implementation. Speaking of sitting, when you are sitting on a fur rug, depending on how you're sitting on it, the texture is flashing under you, which is immersion breaking too. I think this is because of the hold E to pick up UI element that is still visible when sitting on it, which is a shame. Also, a button to unequip/re-equip your currently held items would be really good, purely for immersion purposes here, because right now if you want to achieve this you have to press an empty element on your hotbar to equip your fists, and also go into your character screen to unequip your shield if you just want your character to not be holding anything while you are relaxing at your lovely base. Touching on a couple of quality of life features, right now all loot has to be picked up manually. It would be really nice if it just got automatically collected when you're close enough. I'm really just talking about loose loot here, not talking about interacting with an object or other container, but for example when you are cutting down a tree and keep having to spam the pickup button to get your wood, twigs or resin afterwards. It would just help to cut down on button presses. Here's a little clip from Valheim of what that would look like. There's another thing I'm very surprised I haven't seen yet, and that's signs. Maybe they exist and I just didn't unlock them yet, but being able to label chests to be able to remember what you're using them for in a game with such a huge amount of items to keep track of would be very helpful to have right from the early stages of the game. Touching briefly on the combat, there's one large issue that stands out to me. The issue is that when you go to parry and miss the timing window and get hit, your shield doesn't then come up even though you are holding the button, and the enemy will hit you with their entire combo. A harsh penalty. This doesn't happen every time though. After some testing it appears that it's quite intermittent, although from my subjective experience in real fights, it happens more often than you are seeing in the footage here. When it doesn't happen, after eating the first hit, your shield comes up correctly to protect you from the rest of the hits. A workaround I just figured out is that if the shield doesn't come up automatically as expected, you can let go of the shield button and then press it again, and it will block attacks. But by then you've still eaten more damage than you should have. Now the meat and bones of the video, the building system. Blocks poke through the roof in certain situations. For example, if you build a crossbeam inside a house, or if you use the stepped wall build piece, it looks really odd. You can get around it by deleting the pieces that poke out, but then it doesn't look right on the inside. Still better than the alternative, however. I really wish there was just diagonal wall pieces. I did wonder if it's a limitation of the engine. However, they already have slanted pieces for roofs, so hopefully that's not the case and they can remedy the situation. There are times when you're unable to edit or create a block that is behind another object. Even if you're able to select it with your cursor, it seems like an object still takes up the entire block it occupies, even if visibly it looks like you should be able to interact with the block behind it, you actually can't. You can work around this by taking down the object, then editing the block behind it and then putting the object down again. The game grants you the ability to undo your build pieces, up to 5 times in a row. This is amazing functionality to have by default in the game, and is something you had to use a mod to get in Valheim. However, it would be lovely if you could change the undo history size to a much higher number, and if you also had the ability to redo as well as undo, that would really be an additional time saver when building. Now this is something I think is unlikely for them to implement, but it would be really nice to have, and that's that right now you can only rotate build pieces on one axis. It'd be really nice to be able to rotate on the other two as well. This isn't something that these kind of games normally have, but it's possible to have it in Valheim with the use of a mod, and the building possibilities that it unlocks, particularly for decoration, are incredible, and it really would be a nice thing to have in this game too. When trying to get the right placement for your decorative pieces, getting the pickup prompt for an item that's on top of another item is hard. You can't just aim your cursor at the item you want, you have to move around randomly until the correct prompt appears, which is fiddly at best. And you often have to get above the object to reliably get the prompt to appear. And when placing objects on top of other objects, when snapping is enabled, it can cause objects to hover in the air, and when snapping is disabled, it can cause objects to sink into other objects instead of just resting on top of them. That was a lot of objects. Regarding item placement in general, it would be really nice to be able to place all items in the game within the world for decorative purposes. It adds so much. I really can't believe that no game since Skyrim has taken this seriously. Every item in that game was placeable, and this was done by the devs, not a mod, even if it was a little janky at times. That it's 2024 and we still can't do this in all survival games is disappointing to me, and I believe that the lack of decorative options really is one of the main things holding back the genre right now. I want to be able to play a survival game that has so many decorative options available that you feel overwhelmed by it, that will allow you to flesh out fine details of your buildings without having to repeat yourself all the time. Imagine being able to put a piece of honey on a plate next to your bed, or a potion on a cabinet next to the front door. These details really help you to feel like you're creating a living, breathing space, and really extend the life of the building system of your game. Moving on, I was getting a not enough free space message when trying to place a bed underground. I assume this is a bug and not a feature though, otherwise what's the point of having the ability to build underground bases if you can't sleep there? The underground digging is the main advantage of the voxel-based system after all. Not to mention that red "you can't do this" functionality, at least in my opinion, is an absolute no-no for a building game. Let your players decide whether something is correct. developers shouldn't be blocking players from building something wherever they want to in the first place. This is one of the things that allows Valheim to be the king of building games, that there's no red in it, which means, for example, if you want to clip an object inside another object, the game won't stop you. It's simply up to you to decide whether or not it looks right or not, because often you can make something amazing as a result. Okay, so these are all things that are important to me. Other people might have different priorities, and that's okay. For now though, I'm going to carry on enjoying myself, and hopefully some of this stuff will be addressed in the future. Feel free to leave a comment down below telling me what's important to you that you'd like to see changed in this game. I have a feeling certain things won't ever change though, due to limitations of the game engine itself. For example, the fact that it's all based around voxels means that not being able to edit a block behind another block that an object like a mug is occupying could potentially be due to the fact the game engine interprets that block as being occupied, even though visibly you can see through part of it, and that the mug actually takes up the same space according to the game engine as a block of wood or stone, even though it doesn't look like it does. And if this assumption is true, the only reason the game is able to have anything that isn't just a cube is because of visual trickery, essentially using transparency as a design feature to get around this limitation. I could be completely wrong here though, this is just purely a guess. Now, you may notice I've brought up Valheim a few times during this video, and that's because as far as I'm concerned, Valheim is the gold standard for those of us for whom building is the primary activity we like to do in survival games. The flexibility, the design of the building system that game gives you is second to none, and that's before you start modding it. That said, Enshrouded brings new functionality to the building table that Valheim does not have, for example the ability to dig and build underground, and the ability to edit your build pieces voxel by voxel, which feels like a game changer. However, having spent a week with the game now and put in about 30 hours, it seems like that also comes with some potential trade-offs. Some of which I've already talked about, some of which I haven't. For example, trying to put down a piece of fence on the ground and having a hard time getting it to stand up vertically because the ground underneath it isn't perfectly flat. This stuff is a shame, but we will see how things develop and whether or not the developers are able to find some more tricks up their sleeve to improve the flexibility of the building system. To wrap up, and I do say this partly as a joke, but I really hope they don't fix this bug because it's extremely fun. That's all from me. Peace out.
Alright, I want to go all the way down. Don't hit the rock. Meow.
Hell yeah.
No,
we got this.
Tree, rock.
Oh.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah, it got me too.